thanks, James, for that great discussion. I'm Tim Green. I'm the features editor of the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. And earlier this year at MEF Connects Digital Transformation, I was asked to record 3 videos in advance and present them during the event. And I must have done something right because they've asked me to do the same again for MEF Connects Wholesale. So here we are with 3 videos in the can. And I'm delighted to present them to you now. So over the next half an hour, we'll be hearing from Deutsche Telekom, Fox Carrier and Vodafone, covering topics ranging from 5G security to voice A2P. So first up, here's a chat I had with Francesco Botta from Deutsche Telekom, and we talked about what lies ahead for roaming in a software-driven, network-sliced 5G world. So hopefully we can run BT now. Hi everyone, I'm Tim Green. I'm the features editor of the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, and welcome to this quick-fire video conversation as part of MEF Connects Wholesale virtual event. Today we'll be diving into the topic of 5G and getting the inside story from one of the world's most committed 5G MNOs. So I'm delighted to be joined by Francesco Botta, who's the Senior Product Manager for 5G Roaming Enablement at Deutsche Telekom. So let's just start with a basic question. What does from the Deutsche Telekom perspective, what does 5G mean for MNOs?
Okay, so in general, what we see is that what we think is that 5G has the potential to totally transform the telecommunication industry, because it's a protocol that is designed to connect everything to everything everywhere. And it brings the concept of quality of service and quality of experience also to non-human use cases, let me say. It is really designed for the IoT business. For some operators, the one that are focusing on consumer side, 5G in some cases for them is somehow, let me say, just a new G. Their focus is mostly on rolling out the new radio access network. This focus is eventually on refarming the frequencies of previous technologies, on decommissioning the previous technologies into to be able to have a better coverage due to the new 5G. For those operators, non-standalone is in some cases sufficient. Then we have what we see also operators instead that they focus more on enterprises, and those operators instead they focus a lot on campus network proposition. They start to be triggered also on how to provide international campus networks across different countries, and they focus on network slicing. So they are investing in the 5G core to really try to experiment with the new demand coming. Lastly, okay, there is the group of operators focusing a lot on IoT, where IoT doesn't stand anymore now with 5G, doesn't stand anymore only with coverage, but really stands with flexibility, with possibility to provide different monitoring, different reporting, analysis of data. And those operators are also more requesting additional involvement also from carriers like us to be able to provide more flexibility on the data transport. So all in all, what we can say for all of them, for all these operators, in general, 5G stands for much more data. So it is expected the data to increase around, especially in roaming, around a factor 36% in the next 4 to 5 years. The IoT roaming data is also expected to overtake the consumer data in 5 to 6 years from now. The other pillars for sure is quality of service and the security.
Okay, we just mentioned roaming there, and obviously roaming is in your job title. So maybe we can just turn our attention to that. So could you give us an indication of whether operators are ready for 5G standalone roaming, or is it still a long way away?
Okay, in general, the industry, I would say, is in testing mode, is an experimental mode to see how the new roaming will work. Because with 5G brings a lot of complexities. So on one side, the specification on some aspects are still not fully closed, or if they are closed, there are still discussion on how to make the new concept still operable. For example, the network slicing is still not clear how roaming will work, not only on the technical side, but also on the commercial side in the interaction between operators. Same applies for security, where the discussion is farther ahead. But there are still a lot of operational discussion ongoing. In addition, what we can say is that the roaming departments of the operators are really overloaded at the moment. And these are the same departments that they were under job cutting in the previous years. Because now, in addition comes, okay, we have on one side non-standalone roaming. On the other side comes also the VoLTE roaming that with the refarming of the frequency becomes a necessity. The total new type of services that could be launched will have also huge impact on them, because with this new software-driven architectures, operators could expose themselves. So they could expose APIs for partners to deploy new services together. And all those services must be transported via roaming scenarios. So in general, the roaming industry is really going to be heavily impacted by 5G. And as carriers, we have to be ready to support this new flexibility that is required.
Okay, well, let's turn our attention to security. So, obviously, with cloud-native 5G, all the network functions that would traditionally be delivered by hardware are run as software applications in the cloud. So, that is going to change the nature of the security threats. Can you sort of summarize the situation and maybe talk about how 5G security can address some of the threats faced by the previous MNO networks?
Okay, so in general, security is a core concept of 5G. So with 5G, security becomes a business requirement. It's not anymore a discussion on the operator side, it's not anymore a discussion on who pays for security. It's not anymore a nice to have. Now it is really clear that with 5G, security is at the core of the specification of how roaming should work. And somehow, without security, roaming cannot be enabled. So in that sense, it's core. Security is also, it becomes even more necessary with 5G, because with 5G, as I mentioned before, operators are triggered to expose their network functions to to partners. And with this exposure must also be secured. So to avoid any type of network infiltration by third parties. So security is core, and 5G defines really this concept of end-to-end security between the single peer points. And at the moment, there are huge discussions on how to make this end-to-end security without impacting services that are necessary, especially in the roaming industry. Because until now, with the previous technology, security was more a kind of, roaming in general was more an op-by-op roaming. And with this new concept of end-to-end security, this is impacting all the concepts of roaming value-added services, potentially also the carriers, and potentially also the roaming apps. Values could be impacted by the bringing this new security. So at the moment in the industry, especially in the 5G MRR, there are a lot of discussion on how to tackle this, let's say, this operability necessity compared to this security necessity. So we need to find a way to help operators during this journey to 5G, considering also that there will be different technology islands. So there will not be only 5G standalone roaming, but there will be operators in different stage of this migration to 5G for some time to be. For this reason, what we think as Deutsche Telekom global carrier is that the focus should be not only on 5G standalone security via the new SEC or outsourcing SEC functionality, but there should be the same equivalent security also in the previous protocols.
Just as a final question, maybe you can outline your plans from Deutsche Telekom in terms of 5G for the next year.
Our focus in the future is to really support the early movers in this 5G, this migration toward 5G standalone roaming. And to do so, we are launching several proof of concepts with some operators to test how the new signaling works, how the new security concept and framework works. But we are also planning additional POC to test all the network slicing roaming and the roaming value-added service.
Great. Okay. Well, look, Francesco, thanks for all of your insights today. Thanks for joining us, and good luck with your plans for the next year. And to everyone else out there, enjoy the rest of the conference. Great. Okay. That all went well. No technical issues. That's good. It's a relief. So it's interesting to hear Francesco there talking about roaming, which is obviously one of the most well-established and oldest revenue sources in the market, but still innovation going on there. And on a similar note to that, we turn to voice, which is still full of innovation and opportunity many, many years, decades after voice first emerged as an opportunity for MNOs. So next up is a fascinating conversation I had with Essen Amadi from Box Carrier, and we talked about the innovation that's still happening in this voice space, in voice for authentication, for onboarding and other areas, and what an opportunity this can be for MNOs and messaging aggregators. So with that, I'll hand back over to the technical team. Hello everyone, I'm Tim Green, Features Editor at the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, and welcome to this short video Q&A for the MEF CONNECTS Wholesale virtual event. In this session, we'll be focusing on the topic of voice A2P, and more precisely how it might disrupt some SMS A2P use cases. So I'm delighted to be joined by someone with strong opinions on this subject, and that's Essen Amadi, and he's the CEO and founder of Box Carrier. First of all, just tell us about voice A2P and where the market's at the moment, and if you're seeing any growth and so on.
We see some between 10, 20% and 200-300%. So the volumes are growing crazy, I would say, and we believe that it will be the trend in the next years. We're gonna see a couple of hundreds of percentage, maybe thousands of percentage growth on voice A2P. You know, percentage-wise to grow is not that hard, especially when everything is in the beginning.
So can you talk about some of the innovations that are changing voice A2P?
The use case that we see a lot of traction is authentication. And it usually comes with the API. It's come with an API that facilitate the authentication. Instead of SMS, the user receiving a missed call, and that A number is the code actually. I mean, Telegram use this technology already, so there are the API is public and everyone can take a look at it. So the code, instead of coming as a SMS, it's come as a missed call, and the number itself is the code for authentication. Much faster, much safer. Like a normal call, the number is a normal number. Format is a normal format of numbering format, like any P2P call. So for criminals to intercept and realize that this is a code is much harder than SMS. And usually between the voice carriers and the MNOs, there's a type of encryption anyway in place. So even that A number or whatever is encrypted in most of the time. And but even without encryption, the security risk is not that high comparing to SMS, and it's much also faster because like it's just a couple of seconds of having the missed call, the number will be intercepted by the application, and in case that there is no access, the phone or the user doesn't give the permission, then it falls back to SMS. For global brands, on the end of the KPI is to reduce their total cost of authentication, total cost of new customers, you know, onboarding new customers. So they're gonna mix most probably flash call with SMS A2P in order to reduce their overall cost of for this process of authentication.
Yeah. Can you talk more specifically about actual use cases and particular brands or enterprises that might start using flash calls?
In the last 3 to 6 months, many OTTs and many global brands announced adoption of flash calls, and big names like Imo, which in some region is in top 10 generators of SMS. And more than 80-90% of their SMS traffic use case is authentication. WhatsApp, top 5 generators of international SMS A2P.
You're talking about quite telco-centric companies there. Can you see companies like Uber or Netflix or, you know, retailers, those kinds of companies? Can you see them embracing it as well?
So I'm sure that more and more more and more OTTs and brands, when they see that WhatsApp adopted, they're gonna look at it, and I'm sure that today they are looking at it. And we have some requests, we receive some, we have a lot of discussion around this topic with many brands, so they started to look at it. It will take some time, but most of them, their product team, they started to analyze how they can implement it, and most probably more and more OTTs and global brand is going to launch new future updates on their applications in order to support flash calling authentication.
Final question, should MNOs and other carriers be concerned? Is this an opportunity, or should MNOs be worried about the margin implications?
It's not fair that today the cost of flash call is zero, right? It's not sustainable, just I think, but it's not either normal that the cost of SMS termination to be 10-20 cents. So we need to have a balance, you know. They price the voice A2P in a manner that keep it sustainable, and not like SMS A2P that they just, in some regions, that the price got crazy. In order to keep it sustainable and to keep it workable, let's say, and competitive for OTTs, for global brands, because otherwise we push them again to go and do looking for alternative, because it just doesn't work. 20 cents is or 10-15 cents is too high for them. And next time, maybe the way that they will find will not be a service from telcos, and they will lose the revenue, and this revenue will shift to other technologies or other spaces. So it's good to this time to have a much, let's say, long-term type of approach when it comes to pricing, in order to keep this opportunity and this support the use cases and keep them inside of telco space.
Great. Well, it just goes to show there's still innovation going on in all corners of the business, even in voice. So great to catch up with you, Ace, and thank you very much for your insights, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a great discussion.
Good. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that one. And now on to the final video, where we talk about another interesting growth area, and that is cloud virtual numbers. So here's a chat I had with Tanga Dureraj at Vodafone about the huge potential of this market and the advantages that MNOs have here over new OTT entrants. Run BT. Hi everyone, I'm Tim Green. I'm the features editor at the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, and welcome to this quick-fire video conversation for the MEF Connects Wholesale virtual event. Today, as part of our deep dive into the impact of 5G, we'll be focusing on the topic of virtual cloud numbers. So I'm delighted to be joined by someone who knows a lot about that stuff, and that is Tanga Dureraj, and he is the head of carrier voice at Vodafone Global Enterprise. Okay, so let's start with the basics. Briefly explain what a virtual cloud number is.
When we talk about virtual cloud number, what we're talking about is a number which is not tethered with any specific person or a device. So the number is typically used in a cloud environment. So you could recycle it, you could reuse it, you could actually reassign to different people and different applications, depending on what you need at a given time. So this is exactly why we call this as a virtual cloud number, so that it doesn't have an identity at any given time. It continues to change. Okay, so we already have virtual cloud numbers. So why don't you tell me some of the real world applications of this technology and which sectors and companies are using it? Right, yeah. The advantage of this virtual cloud number is it kind of integrates the legacy telecom world with the emerging new convergence world. Because so far the convergence world has been happening completely independent, and then they've not been able to integrate with the legacy telecom. So what happens is the cloud number, it's now bringing both world together. So that means you do have a truly unified communications. So the some of the area where it does really help is the unified communications. When you talk about unified communications, things like, log me in, Zoom, all these phone calls, Teams and Cisco. So majority of the calls may continue to happen on a data, but then you integrate that conference bridge along with the telecom world, either by dialing number or by dialing out to the participant. So this is one of the biggest area where there is a demand for the numbers. And the other one you could point out is a wider industry adaptation of the contact centers. So all the CRM applications, okay, this becomes much more important in the today's world because the customers are not able to actually, mostly they're trying to get the company support either from one or two global contact centers. So regardless of where you're buying the service, but you do get the support from 2 or 3 contact centers. That means they do need a local number in those countries, and that number is not just necessarily a only way of communication. It becomes one of the ways how they communicate with the CRM or the contact center, and this has been phenomenal growth on this recently. And then the third one, I would say, there is an innovation of new use cases driven by the next gen players. For example, Google or Uber or Airbnb. We never had those applications 10 years ago. So they all started picking up. And these are also some of the use cases which never came into the being. And that applications need a number resource to communicate with the telecom world. So these are also some of the 3 major areas why there is a huge demand for these numbers.
A lot of viewers will be aware of the examples you've just given, but if we take an example like Uber or Google, can you walk me through the kind of the problem, the business problem that is solved for them by virtual cloud numbers that traditional numbers couldn't address?
Let's say we take a Teams as an example in this case. In a normal Teams app, okay, when I log into the Teams allow you to make the phone calls out of the Teams. So I can just call anybody by using the Teams, but then I don't get the identification of the Teams call. Whereas if I'm able to now have an app, because most of us have an app in your phone, if the Teams is able to have a link to the identity of a number, then when I make a call from Teams, I'm able to now call any number in the world. And not, okay, that means when somebody receives a call, they don't know whether I'm using from Teams or I'm using a mobile handset. The advantage of this is now I can take the call and receive the call either in my mobile phone or maybe a laptop or maybe in any different device, wherever I am. Okay? And also it doesn't stop me from being in one place because now I could be anywhere in the world as long as I have a data connection.
Obviously, you just mentioned Teams there, and so the last 18 months has seen a exponential rise in applications like Teams.
Right.
Can you give us an indication as to what's happened to the demand for virtual cloud numbers in COVID era and lockdowns?
So the business on this side has actually, grew in some countries maybe more than 200% in the last 2 years since the lockdown started. So even though plenty of calls actually started happening on data demand overshot even 400-500%. But in many countries, you still have a numbers-based conference calls or the connecting to the companies. And that's where the demand, we saw that gone up maybe more than 100-150% in some other countries.
Yeah.
I think more importantly, Tim, I think it's not just only the COVID acceleration, and COVID also changed the way how the business started looking at it to engage with the customers. So that means majority of the companies now going into more like, converged way of communications, which could be contact center, could be even not just only, again, unified communication. So these applications start becoming a trend now, not just because of COVID, it just changed the way how we are thinking about it.
See, the 5G era is coming. How might that impact the business of virtual cloud numbers?
5G allows someone to, operator to do the network slicing. So it also allows operator to choose to prioritize and give a specific SLA for any different applications in the phone. And so that means if I have, we all probably have like a 50 different applications. When you use a data, And we don't want all of them because most of them, as you know, is just doing the background updates. So, but if we want to prioritize one app against other, maybe the business applications could be prioritized. So that's where 5G is going to help. This, prioritization and then guaranteed SLA and user experience.
Okay, so we've seen a lot of sometimes they're called hyperscalers, over-the-top players, whatever, coming into the markets like this. What advantages does an MNO like Vodafone have over these non-telcos in this space?
Yeah, we just spoke about the teams and all of them can use the number, right? But then I think we didn't talk about it. Is it as easy as just use a number? No, right? Because if that is easy, WhatsApp would have used all the number to make the international call. We didn't do that because when you use a number to connect to a telecom world, you need to be aware of their local regulations in the country. So without their local regulations, compliance and knowledge, you cannot actually start using the number in every places. And then if these new applications, who's ever doing it, whether Teams or Uber logging in, if they're not being aware of what is actually their local regulations, it will be increasingly difficult for them to give the unified experience to their customers. A company buying the service, they may have operations in 10 countries, but they don't care what are the regulations. And this is where the operators like Vodafone brings a value. Because when they offer the service, they can't offer something which is not in compliance with local regulations.
If those CAGR figures are right, then it's going to be an interesting few years ahead of us. And it will be, I'm sure there'll be many new applications that many of us have never even guessed at. Tanga, thank you so much for your insights today. And we'll catch up again soon. Great. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed those short conversations. Just goes to show that whatever happens in this industry, there's always an opportunity to innovate and make money, and that's what the MEF community does best. So we'll be posting those videos on the site soon, so you can watch again or share with colleagues. So look out for information on that soon. And with that, I'll say thank you and enjoy the rest of the event. And I'll hand back to James and Susie for the next session, which is the new revenue industry looking for new growth. Thank you.